drops a atomic bomb.
The free nation face a worldwide threat. It must be met with a worldwide defense.
Hello everyone and welcome to Axis and Allies 1951. Today we'll be taking a closer look at the US faction. So just like every other Axis and Allies game, the United States obviously has two fronts. They have the European front and they have the Pacific front. However, unlike the other games, each front has their own IPC chart, their own income. And that is to help sort of make make the game a little bit more playable. So if you happen to have more than 4 players, because this game is sort of a 4-player person in the beginning, but if you have more than 4, 2 people can technically play as the United States. One can play as the European commander, and one can play as the Pacific commander. Now, for the U.S. European theater, just like kind of like at the beginning of World War II, the majority of the U.S. forces are stationed at home. Unlike World War II, though, there are some forces abroad. The United States is providing some protection here in Iceland at the NATO air base there at Keflavik. The United States has a bomber force inside the United Kingdom. And then we have the U.S. German occupation forces with the U.S. First Army and the U.S. 7th Army. Now, like it was explained in the introduction, these 2 army markers represent the 2 armies on this board, the U.S. 7th Army and the U.S. First Army. These NATO troops with the U.S. First Army are part of the Berlin Defenders that are currently under attack right at the beginning of the game, along with the U.S. units from the U.S. 7th Army. The U.S. Navy in the Atlantic doesn't start out all that strong. We have a battleship, a carrier with 2 jet fighters, and a transport. That is one thing for this game. All fighters are jet fighters. However, the tactical bombers are still prop-driven planes, so they don't get the sort of extra jet fighter bonuses. Over here in the Pacific, the United States owns more territory, as it pretty much occupied a lot of the main islands and kept them after World War II. For the U.S. Pacific player, obviously their capital sort of is at San Francisco in the western United States, with some forces there. The U.S. Pacific player has a base in Alaska, and as tradition, bases in Hawaii, airfields and at Midway, the bomber bases in Guam. The U.S. has a small occupation force in the Philippines as well as Okinawa. However, where the U.S. is at least short on manpower but also sort of strong is here in Japan and Korea. Now, the U.S. 8th Army, again, on the battle board over here. Now, the U.S. 8th Army is very weak in Korea, and this is due to the fact that obviously the Chinese have come into the war and they destroyed a good number of the U.S. forces stationed in Korea. And that is also why Japan is sort of weak in the beginning, because most of the forces that were occupying Japan at the time had been sent to Korea and they were all lost. The U.S. naval presence around Japan and Korea is a little bit stronger. You got 2 submarines, a battleship, and then a carrier with 2 jet fighters, and then you also have a jet fighter in Japan that can obviously scramble if the Soviet Navy in the north decides to come down and pick a fight, or if the small Chinese Navy also decides to come and pick a fight. And as well, they can hopefully get some help from the jet fighter that is also in Okinawa, but the forces in Okinawa need to be careful because, as you can see, the Chinese have 2 transports that could launch an attack and capture Okinawa right away, which could help the Chinese out as far as trying to outflank Japan. Overall, the United States does start out pretty strong. The the U.S. European forces start out with 39 IPC a turn, and then the Pacific player starts out with 40 IPC a turn. However, the United States does not start with any nukes. We basically decided that because of the use of an atomic bomb in Manchuria, that the United States don't have any more, and they have to wait to obviously buy more. Outside of that, that is pretty much a quick rundown of the U.S. forces. Oh, one other thing. There's another group of forces here. In the game, we do have reserve forces that the United States, the Soviet Union, and NATO can draw upon throughout the first couple turns. And these forces, obviously represent some of the forces that the United States had in reserve at the time of Korea, because President Truman had ordered a partial mobilization, and there were several National Guard units and 1 or 2 armored divisions that were being reconstituted and retrained for potentially deployments to either Korea or to Germany in the event that the Russians came into the war. But so that's the overall look of the United States at the beginning of the game. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment, subscribe, and I hope you all have a good day.